Hello and welcome to the Thousand Suns series, where we go from your first purchase to your first 2,000 point army list and everything in between for the Chaos Forces of the Thousand Suns. In this video, like we do in all of the first videos of my different series on different factions within the 40k universe, we'll begin with a little bit of a buyer's guide to help you with some of your possible first purchases when starting a Thousand Suns army. And to begin with, the Thousand Suns are a powerful army that can use psychic powers very well, have a lot of mortal wound output, and are a little more elite than normal Chaos Forces, but a little less elite than an army like Death Guard. Speaking of Death Guard, they and the Thousand Suns make for great allies, and in general the appeal of Chaos is you can mix and match the different factions so very well to give yourself a lot of variety when it comes to list building, even when some of the sub-factions may not have that much variety in themselves. Though when you do mix and match different factions, you do give up some benefits, such as the contagions within the Death Guard forces, or the Kabbalistic rituals within the Thousand Suns. Even with that in mind, it's still a trade-off that is worth it in many cases, while in other cases, you can just go mono faction and do perfectly fine. So there's no real right or wrong way to build a Thousand Suns army, and it really just depends on the kind of player you want to be. And if you happen to be interested in learning more about the Death Guard, check out my series on them linked in the description, and for additional series content on other factions, check out my channel's playlists, as that's where you'll find all of the different playlists sorted nice and neatly for you. With introductions out of the way, let's take a look at some of the different box sets that the Thousand Suns have available to them. The first of these sets is going to be a little different than other videos, as this one we don't actually have available yet, but I'm going to do some speculation as the different new codexes usually have a combat patrol page that has so far shown the combat patrol box that will become available, and the one shown for the Thousand Suns does come out to about 500 points, although it's not particularly exciting. So at this point, this is more of a preview of something that might come in the future, and if you're watching when the combat patrol has already come out and it is the same, then you can just follow this video directly. But if it comes out and it's different, I'll change this video and re-upload it with the correct combat patrol once we know what the contents are. So what does the supposed Thousand Suns Combat Patrol have to offer? Well, it begins with an HQ choice, being an Infernal Master. And an Infernal Master is actually a rather good HQ choice, though we don't really know what the price of the Infernal Master is going to be, so our best guess is going to be between $30 to $40, with $35 being a good compromise, as that's usually what an HQ character costs, though it's difficult to say until he is available individually. Following the Infernal Master is the troop choice of the Combat Patrol, being 2 boxes of the Zangor troop choice, and each of these boxes will contain 10 models. In addition to that, they also contain the upgrade sprues, and while each of these boxes cost $44, the total cost of these 20 Zangors will be $88. In addition to that, you are getting those upgrade sprues. Those Zangor upgrade kits would normally cost you $12.50 each, which seems a little bit ridiculous, so I don't really know how to value them, because normally you're not going to be buying individual Zangor kits, and rather you're going to be buying kits like this, where you get those upgrade kits with the chainsword and the bolt pistol, in addition to your Zangor models, as opposed to individually, because buying it individually is very awkward and very expensive. So I'll let you decide what you value those upgrade kits at. I'd say about $6 for 2 upgrade kits is about what the value should be, as that roughly bring up the Zangor box to about $50, which is right around what a troop choice should cost, though you can go higher than that, and the official cost is at $12.50. And after those 2 Zangor boxes, you get a box of Scarab Occult Terminators, which includes 5 individual Terminators and would normally cost you $60. In total, if you bought all of this individually, without taking the upgrade sprues into account, it would cost you a total of $183, so you're saving about $43, assuming that's all that's included in this box, which it probably will be, because that does add up to about 430 points before any war gear upgrades, so once you add all of the war gear, you're pretty much at 500 points. And one thing I'll say is do keep in mind that those Zangor upgrade kits are there, and normally to equip 20 Zangors, you would need a total of 4 individual kits, which would run you $50 if bought individually, but I don't really know if you really want to value them that way, because as you'll see, all of these bundles include those Zangors with the upgrade kits, and as such you'll generally acquire them without having to buy everything individually. That being said, I definitely find this box to be a little bit underwhelming, as all you're getting that's exciting is that Infernal Master and the 5 Scarab Occult Terminators. The 20 Zangors are pretty boring, and honestly I just would have preferred that they were simply a unit of Rubric Space Marines, as those would do you a lot better than the Zangors will, considering the Zangors haven't been that popular within the 9th edition rules, so their application is definitely a bit limited. Who knows, maybe we'll all be surprised, and the Combat Patrol will be different than what is shown in the Codex, though so far every single Codex has been true in what it showed as a Combat Patrol kit, so I doubt it's going to be any different this time around. Though if you can think of any exceptions, do let me know in the comments down below. After the Combat Patrol, which isn't out yet and will be out in the near future, we have 2 kits that have already come out, but are pretty hard to find this time due to limited print run or simply being out of print, and will probably be replaced with that Combat Patrol box. So let's take a look at the first of these kits, being the Hexfire set, which included the Thousand Suns and the Grey Knights. These kind of sets are usually incredible value, so if you can find them, they're definitely a good pickup. And the Hexfire kit would normally cost you about $170, and for the Thousand Suns, it would include the following options. 1 Infernal Master, that we valued at $35, 10 Zangors with the upgrade kits, so those would come out to $44, plus whatever you attribute to the value of those upgrade kits. 5 Scarab Occult Terminators, which would cost you $60 if bought individually, and 1 Zangor Shaman, which would cost you $35, being a character in himself. This in total would add up to $174 in itself, and as such you would be saving $4 plus whatever the cost of those upgrade sprues if you bought this box and only cared about the components for the Thousand Suns. Though don't forget, you probably get roughly the same value of Grey Knights within this box set as well, so you do have to keep that in mind, and as such you're probably going to come out with about 2 times the value of what this box is worth in terms of the models that are included. Though with that being said, if you're not interested in building a Grey Knight army, those additional models might not be worth it to you, though you can probably sell them secondhand at a discount and still come out ahead. Though inversely, if you have a friend that likes the Grey Knights, you can split the cost of this box, and as such, it would cost you about 50% of what this box is worth, and after the split, if you split it 50-50, you would still be getting twice the value of this set. And as such, if you can still find this limited print run kit, it's definitely something interesting if you can get it for its original price. Though with that being said, you're probably going to have a very hard time finding this one. I just thought it'd be good to mention, as people do ask me about these kind of things from time to time as they're able to buy them. And at the very least, I've given you an idea of what the Thousand Sun side would cost, so if someone offers you that half the kit, you know what it's roughly worth, and you can make your own decisions based on those numbers. The second kit that's going to be very hard to find is the old Start Collecting kit for the Thousand Suns. This kit still shows as being available on the Games Workshop website, but is now temporarily out of stock and is most likely being replaced by that Combat Patrol box once it comes out. Though in some situations, you might still be able to find this kit in some shops, so if you do come across it, the base cost of this kit is $95, and what's included in this kit is 1 HQ choice, being Ahriman, who would normally cost you $40. Ahriman is definitely a decent HQ choice, and does still see play, although he has been a little less popular after the 9th edition Codex came out. And after Ahriman, you get that same unit of 10 Zangor troops with those 2 upgrade packs, and that would once again cost you $44. But unlike the other kits, which include the Scarab Occult Terminators, this Start Collecting kit includes a second troop choice, being a unit of 10 Rubric Space Marines, which would normally run you $59 if bought individually. And in total, if you bought everything individually, this starter kit would add up to $143, plus whatever value you attribute to those upgrade kits for those Zangors, and as such you'd be saving $48, which is a pretty good deal. And in many ways, if you're planning to buy an Ahriman and a unit of Rubric Space Marines, you might as well buy the starter kit if you can, because you get those Zangors for free, even if they're not that interesting. In any case, all 3 of these kits actually give you enough savings to be rather interesting, though outside of the Hexfire box, it's definitely hard to say which is better, because neither the Start Collecting nor the Combat Patrol box is particularly that impressive in itself. And whereas with the Death Guard one, you at least wanted the mass number of Poxwalkers, the Zangors definitely aren't as good by comparison. Generally, the value you're going to get is out of that Infernal Master or Ahriman and those Scarab Terminators or Rubric Marines, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but if it wasn't for the savings, these wouldn't be that appealing. But honestly, if the Combat Patrol comes out as we're expecting it to, the savings are pretty much not there, as all you're really getting are those upgrade sprues and that 1 box of Zangors. So as such, I would say in many cases, you'd be better off buying the old Start Collecting kit if you can still find it, and then buying individual kits from there on out. This is actually rather unfortunate, as it does mean that Thousand Suns ends up being kind of an expensive army in comparison to some other choices. That's not to say they end up being the most expensive, just that they're kind of on the pricier side for those who want to build a 100% Thousand Sun army, though there's still hope that the Combat Patrol box will be a little more appealing than it is now. Now that we've covered the box sets available for the Thousand Suns, let's take a look at some of the things you can buy outside of those box sets if you don't think the value is there in them. The first of those things that we're about to have is the HQ choice of the Exalted Sorcerers or the Infernal Master if you choose not to buy one of those discount kits, as both the Exalted Sorcerer and the Infernal Master see play in the majority of Thousand Sun lists as one of their HQ choices. There's also Ahriman and the Demon Prince, but both those take a more secondary role in comparison to these 2 HQ choices. Both are decently low costed and rather powerful. After the Exalted Sorcerer and the Infernal Master, the basic troop choice is never bad to have as well, especially as many Thousand Sun lists run many units of the Rubric Marines in the Thousand Suns army, so these are going to definitely be your staple troop choice within most of your armies, and usually the Zingors and the Cultists are just going to be supplementary troop choices that take objectives, while the Rubric Marines do most of the heavy lifting with powerful weapons such as the Soul Reaper Cannon, which is a rather powerful weapon that functions similar to a heavy bolter with better stats at the same price point as a heavy bolter. As such, you'll usually see the Soul Reaper cannons in many of your Rubric Marine choices throughout the army. After the Rubric Marines, there's an interesting elite choice that shows up rather often within Thousand Sun lists as well as other Chaos factions. This choice being the Contemptor Dreadnought, and the Contemptor Dreadnought is a little bit pricey both in dollars and in points, and can be purchased off of the Forge World site as well as the Games Workshop site. But even though it's a Forge World model, it isn't particularly expensive in comparison to other Dreadknights in different armies. And the Contemptor Dreadnought is best when it's armed with Volkite weapons, as it can put out a devastating amount of firepower, and as I mentioned, it's great in most of the Chaos factions, as both the Thousand Suns and the Death Guard, which are a common ally to the Thousand Suns, run Contemptor Dreadnoughts really commonly within their different lists. Though I should definitely mention that the Relic Contemptor Dreadnoughts are not in the main Thousand Sun Codex, which does make them a little bit awkward to include, especially because you need additional rules to play them, so that might be a little bit of a deterrent, and can definitely push them into the maybe buy category as opposed to things to buy early on, because they will take a little bit more of an investment than simply buying something like the Hellbrute. In any case, they're still that good of an option that I felt like including them within this list. And finally on the list of things to buy early on are those Scarab Occult Terminators that we saw within the Combat Patrol. The Scarab Occult Terminators are similar to the Rubric Marines, but they're more powerful, and as such they're more expensive in points, which does make them a little less common than the Rubric Marines, but they still see play in the majority of Thousand Sun lists. So if you do plan to pick up a Hexfire box or a Combat Patrol, you might want to hold off buying additional Terminators until you feel ready that your list specifically needs them, as there might be better choices in other options, such as more Rubric Marines or that Contemptor Dreadnought or other choices that we'll cover shortly. After the things that are good to buy early on, there's a list of things that you might want to buy, but aren't particularly something that you would include in the majority of your lists, but you would include in a decent number of your different lists. The first of those is an HQ choice of the Thousand Suns Demon Prince, and he's mostly just there as an alternative HQ choice that is very beefy and powerful as an individual character. So he's more one of those choices that you include when you want a bit of a monstrous HQ, while in most cases you're probably going to include one of those smaller HQ choices, such as an Infernal Master. Though even lists that do run a Demon Prince, they usually run him alongside Exalted Sorcerers and Infernal Masters to complement some of his power, as he fills a bit of a different role than they do. After the Demon Prince, there's an interesting fast attack choice, being the Chaos Spawn. And the Chaos Spawn is definitely a reasonable choice, more so in the Thousand Suns than other Chaos factions, because the Thousand Suns let you control the mutations that they would otherwise randomly generate, and as such, this makes the Thousand Sun Chaos Spawn a little more consistent and a little more powerful. And I should mention that the Chaos Spawn do a decent enough job of being played within the Death Guard forces as well, because the Death Guard have their own special stratagems for those Chaos Spawns, so they do give you a little bit of cross value if you do want to play them in different Chaos factions down the line, thus giving you a little bit more ability to play around with the kind of lists you build. After the Chaos Spawn, the Zangor Shaman isn't a bad choice either, even though he's a little bit more rare to see within army lists. And the reason the Zangor Shaman is a bit of a better choice than the Troops or the Fast Attack version is that he's a rather fast-moving, low-cost sorcerer model that can even benefit other Zangor models, though he is a little bit fragile, so do keep that in mind as he can be a little bit of a liability in his own way. And if you happen to be looking at all these units and thinking that they're a little bit small, there are a lot of different choices that you can buy that'd be good options if you like vehicles and large monsters, such as the Helldrake or the Forge Fiend. The Helldrakes are rather good and even see play in more generic Chaos factions outside of the Thousand Suns, as they do bring a decent amount of power to the tabletop, and as such, they're great within Thousand Suns as well as Chaos Undivided and other Chaos factions. They did see a bit of a downgrade with the recent aircraft changes, though they'll still be fine even in limited quantities, and I still think you're probably going to see them in play, although in a smaller capacity. However, both the Helldrakes and the Forge Fiend, which is a powerful unit in its own right, are definitely really cool models and something that would draw me to the Chaos forces, as they do look really stunning on the tabletop, and both these are great options for anyone looking for big armored units of Doom. And one last thing that's an interesting consideration when you're buying models early on is the Chaos Rhino. The Chaos Rhino is once again kind of a generic choice for different Chaos factions, and that's perfectly fine, as it's a decent enough transport that can help with your army's mobility to some extent. It's not something that you 100% need, but it's never a bad choice to have, as it does help you with mobility in different games, which is always a nice thing to have, because 9th edition is definitely all about mobility and holding objectives more than anything else really. Now that we've covered the box sets, things you should buy, and things that you might want to consider buying early on, we should look at the things that you should probably avoid buying early on when building a Thousand Suns army. The first of those things is a pretty obvious one, being the Zangor troop choices individually, and that's mostly because they're so readily available in those different starter boxes that it's very easy to obtain them, and in most cases, if you're going to be buying those Zangor units, you might as well buy one of those starter boxes and get those upgrade sprues for free, as opposed to buying the Zangor kits individually and then having to buy an additional $25 of Zangor upgrade kits just to get that bolt pistol and chainsword, because that's just kind of messy and expensive, and I wish Games Workshop had a better way of getting those upgrade kits with those Zangors included. In addition to that, the Thousand Sun cultists are generally going to be a better and cheaper choice than the Zangors at this time, as neither is that amazing of a unit, and the cultists are a little bit cheaper in points, making them the generally better selection. After the basic Zangors, the things I would say you should probably avoid early on are things like the different Predators and Land Raiders and other generally generic Chaos Space Marine vehicles. They're just not that good, and they're generally better options that are faction specific or more Chaos specific, especially when you're allying other Chaos forces, as some of the different Chaos factions have really amazing vehicles that would make any vehicle army very jealous. And in all reality, the Predator tanks and the Land Raider probably need some serious changes within all of the different Chaos factions, as none of them really view them as particularly viable, which is rather sad as they're generally classic models and do look kind of cool if you like those kind of tanks, so it'd be nice to see if they can change them so that they bring something unique to the table, as opposed to being generally overcosted weapons platforms that people don't really play unless they're just really short on models or something else went wrong when they were building their army list. And that's pretty much everything you want to avoid specifically early on, though I'll give one honorable mention, and that honorable mention goes to the Demon Primarch Magnus. And the main reason for this being that if you're just trying to build a 500 point army, Magnus himself costs 450 points, so you should probably wait until you're building 1500 to 2000 point armies before you pick up Magnus, and even then he's generally just okay in comparison to some of the other units like him out there, such as the Silent King and Necrons, or Mortarion within the Death Guard. Though that's not to say Magnus is unplayable or particularly bad, it's just one of those units you kind of want to wait until you have more of an idea of what your army's going to look like and you're playing larger scale games, as opposed to buying him right away and then not having any use for him for some time. Though once you're at the point where you have about 1,000 points of other models, he's definitely something you should look at, as he's a rather cool model and can definitely put out some damage. So in other words, what I'm saying is Magnus did nothing wrong, though do keep in mind that he is kind of a niche unit in general. And that kind of covers everything in terms of first purchases, though anything I didn't mention in this video is generally just going to be an okay purchase, so don't be afraid to buy it and try it out, as most units are going to be playable, and even some of the bad units can find a home within a list. So as a whole, view this video as more of a general suggestion than a strict rule in terms of what you should buy. And join me in the next episode of this series as we take a look at some of the special rules that the Thousand Suns have to offer. And after that, we'll be taking a deep dive into the different units within the Thousand Sun army, followed by taking a look at 500 point, 1000 point, and 2000 point army lists, eventually even looking at mixed lists between the Thousand Suns and the Death Guard, as those are rather interesting and show a variety of what Chaos can do when allying different factions. And as always, if you've enjoyed the content, like and subscribe, as it really does help the channel out. And if you get the opportunity, please do share the channel, as that not only massively helps the channel, but also helps the people who may discover it and benefit from the content. I would also like to give a quick shout out to my patrons. You guys are awesome people. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. And regardless if you're a patron or not, thank you for watching and have a great day.